Welcome to BookCast Essays, where great essays speak to you. We're diving deep today into How to Do What You Love by Paul Graham. This essay, it really gets to the heart of something I think we all kind of wrestle with. How do we find work that really lights us up? You know what I mean? If you want to follow along with the essay, we've got a link for you down in the show notes.
Well, and what's so fascinating about Graham is that he's got this wide-ranging expertise. He's a programmer, he's a writer, he's an investor. You name it. He co-founded ViaWeb, which became Yahoo Store, and then, of course, there's Y Combinator.
Right. And Y Combinator has launched so many successful startups, it's kind of ridiculous. Airbnb, Dropbox, Stripe, Reddit. Man, those are just a few. And his essays on his website get something like 25 million page views a year. So clearly he's tapped into something that people really care about.
Oh, absolutely. He really has. And in How to Do What You Love, he tackles this almost universal desire to find work that we don't just tolerate, but that we actually love. You know, it's not just about making a living. It's about finding something that gives you a sense of purpose and fulfillment.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit. One of the first things that Graham challenges is this deeply ingrained belief that work has to be painful. And he traces this back to our childhood, where work was often seen as the opposite of play, something we just had to endure. He even calls it a propaganda campaign.
It really makes you wonder, right? How much of our current perception of work is shaped by those early experiences? I mean, think about it. Were you ever excited about chores? Did you ever look forward to doing your homework? Probably not. And if not, how much has that work equals pain mindset carried over into your adult life? Has it maybe made you less likely to even consider pursuing something that you might truly love?
That's a really good point. It's almost like we've internalized this idea that work has to be something we grind through. And Graham actually points out 3 specific lies that we're often told about work. First, that schoolwork isn't real work. Second, that adult work is even worse. And third, that grown-ups just pretend to like their jobs.
And those lies, as he calls them, they can be incredibly damaging, especially for young people who are just starting to think about their futures. I mean, if you believe that work is inherently awful, why would you even bother trying to find something you love? You'd just settle for whatever pays the bills, right?
Exactly. And it creates this disconnect between what we're told about work and the possibility of after finding a career that lights us up. And speaking of which, Graham shares this anecdote about his dad telling him that he could be anything he wanted as long as he enjoyed it. What do you think? Do you think our parents' attitudes towards work can influence our own?
I mean, absolutely. Think about the messages you received growing up. Was work presented as a necessary evil, or was it something that could bring fulfillment? It's interesting because Graham himself actually had a shift in perspective when he went to college. He went from focusing on how to make money to what to work on.
That's a huge shift. And I think that's something that a lot of us can relate to. At some point, you realize it's not just about the paycheck. It's about finding something that you actually want to spend your time doing.
Right. And this leads to another question. How much are we supposed to like our work? Is it realistic to think that we can find something we're passionate about every single minute of every single day?
That's a great question. And it kind of gets at this idea of a love your work threshold. Graham actually talks about upper and lower bounds for work satisfaction.
Yeah. So he uses the example of Einstein needing a coffee break, right? I mean, even people who are deeply engaged in their work need time to recharge. The upper bound is that no one, even someone doing what they love, wants to work every waking second.
Right. Even Einstein couldn't be on all the time. And Graham also points out that even lying on a beach gets boring after a while. We humans, we need something more to feel truly fulfilled.
Right. And the lower bound is a little more nuanced. It's not necessarily about loving your work more than anything else. It's more about loving it more than any unproductive pleasure.
Okay. So more than endlessly scrolling social media or binge watching TV, for example.
Exactly. Because if you're constantly battling procrastination and forcing yourself to work, the quality of your output is likely to suffer. And it becomes this vicious cycle of frustration and dissatisfaction.
But this all raises another question for me. How do we even know if we're on the right track? I mean, how do we measure our own admiration for our work? Is there any way to tell if we're headed towards something we might truly love?
You know, Graham suggests aiming to do things that would make your friends say, wow. He uses the example of a friend who built a computer as a teenager. That's impressive. It's about setting a standard of excellence and seeking recognition from people whose opinions you genuinely value.
I like that. It's not about seeking external validation for its own sake. It's more about using it as a gauge for whether you're on the right path. So we've talked about the importance of liking what you do, But Graham also cautions against the dangers of being lured by prestige or money.
Yes, and this is where things get really interesting, because those can be powerful forces that lead people away from work that might truly fulfill them. He uses the example of someone wanting to write novels because of the perceived prestige, the dream of winning awards. But that's not the same as actually enjoying the process of writing, the craft of storytelling.
Or think about corporate law. It offers a combination of prestige and money, which can be very tempting, especially for young people just starting out. But are those the right reasons to choose a career?
That's the key question, and it's something each listener needs to ask themselves. What are some potential prestige traps in your field? What are the things that might look appealing on the surface, but wouldn't actually bring you lasting satisfaction?
It's a good reminder to look beyond the superficial and really think about what matters most to us. And sometimes finding that perfect fit involves a bit of exploration, maybe even jumping from one type of work to another.
Right, and Graham acknowledges that not everyone's career path is linear. Some people might find their calling early on, but for many of us, it's a journey of discovery. We try different things, we learn what we like and don't like, and hopefully we get closer to finding work that truly resonates with us.
So if it's a journey, what are some of the paths we can take? Graham actually talks about two main routes to finding work you love.
Yeah, he calls the first route the organic route, and this is about gradually working your way towards a career you love. So you might start with a job that's not your dream job, but it allows you to pay the bills while you gain experience, build your skills, and figure out what truly interests you.
So it's kind of like building a foundation and then adding on to it brick by brick, getting closer to what you really want to be doing.
Exactly. It's about being strategic and patient. You might not land your dream job right away, but each step you take can bring you closer. The key is to constantly be learning and evolving, looking for opportunities that align with your interests and allow you to grow.
Okay, that makes sense. What about the second route?
The second route is what Graham calls the two-job route. This is where you have one job to pay the bills and another job, often in your free time, that you're truly passionate about.
So it's like having a side hustle that feeds your soul while your main job keeps the lights on.
Yes. And Graham emphasizes that this second job, even if it's unpaid, is crucial for testing your passion and honing your skills. He gives the example of someone who dreams of being a novelist but works a day job. Are they actually writing pages in their spare time, or are they just letting that dream fade away?
It's about putting in the work, even when it's tough, even when you're tired from your main job. It's about showing yourself and the world that you're serious about this.
Absolutely. And Graham argues that this two-job approach can actually be more effective than waiting for the perfect opportunity to magically appear. By consistently producing, you're not only getting better at what you love, you're also creating your own opportunities.
Like they say, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe that opportunity you create through your side hustle eventually becomes your main gig. But even if it doesn't, the satisfaction of pursuing your passion and making a contribution to the world can be incredibly rewarding.
So whether you take the organic route or the good job route, it seems like the underlying message is the same. Take action, be persistent, and don't be afraid to experiment. Finding work you love is a journey, not a destination.
Well said. And I think it's important to acknowledge that this journey can be challenging. There will be moments of doubt, frustration, maybe even feeling lost. But Graham reminds us that even people who have achieved great things often have careers with unexpected twists and turns.
They might start in one field and end up in another. Or they might have several side projects before finding their true calling.
Right. It's rarely a straight line from point A to point B. And that's actually encouraging, I think. It means that even if you feel like you're meandering or haven't quite figured things out yet, you're not alone. And it's never too late to change course or try something new.
That's such a good point. So with all that in mind, what are some practical tips for navigating this journey? What can we do starting today to move closer to finding work we love?
Well, Graham suggests a couple of things. First, try to do a good job at whatever you're currently doing, even if you don't love it.
That might seem counterintuitive, but it makes sense when you think about it.
Exactly. It helps you develop a habit of excellence and instills a sense of pride in your work. You're building a solid foundation for future success, even if you're not in your dream job yet.
And the second tip?
Remember the mantra, always produce, make time for your passion projects, even if it's just for a few hours a week. Consistency is key.
So make it a habit, build it into your routine. And as we talked about earlier, it's also a great way to filter out distractions and really hone in on what you truly enjoy doing.
That's right. And remember, the goal isn't to create masterpieces overnight. It's about the process of creating, of learning, of pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone.
It's about embracing the journey and enjoying the ride, even with all its ups and downs.
Yes. And Graham also reminds us to be mindful of how prestige and money can cloud our judgment.
Right, we talked about that earlier. It's so easy to get caught up in the allure of a prestigious title or a high salary. But those things don't always equal true fulfillment.
Yeah, it's crucial to ask yourself, would I still do this work if I wasn't getting paid for it? If the answer is no, then it might be time to reevaluate your priorities.
That's such a powerful question. And it leads to another thought-provoking point that Graham makes. He argues that most unpleasant jobs would either be automated or simply disappear if no one was willing to do them.
It's a radical idea, but it makes sense when you think about it. In a free market, if there's no demand for a particular service, it's unlikely to survive.
So maybe the key to finding work we love is to be more selective, to be less willing to settle for jobs that don't align with our values or interests.
Perhaps. It's certainly something to think about. And it leads to a broader question about the future of work as technology continues to advance. What will happen to those jobs that no one wants to do? Will they be automated away? Will new kinds of work emerge?
It's a question that deserves careful consideration. And it's a reminder that we're not just passive participants in the workforce. We have agency, we have choices, and we have the power to shape the future of work.
Absolutely. We can choose to pursue work that we find meaningful and fulfilling work that aligns with our values and interests.
And maybe by doing so, we can create a world where work is no longer seen as a necessary evil, but rather as an opportunity for growth, creativity, and contribution.
Now that would be something to say wowed about.
Welcome back to BookCast Essays, where great essays speak to you. We're wrapping up our deep dive into Paul Graham's How to Do What You Love.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating conversation, hasn't it? We've covered so much ground, from those early lies we're told about work to the importance of finding our niche, taking action, and even overcoming those pesky self-doubt gremlins.
Yeah, it really has. You know, one thing that keeps coming back to me is Graham's point about not just liking your work, but actually admiring it.
Oh, totally right. It's not just about finding a job that's tolerable or even enjoyable on a good day. It's about finding something that makes you think, wow, that's pretty cool, something you're genuinely proud of.
And I think that ties into that sense of making a real contribution to the world. Finding work that has meaning, work that makes a difference even in a small way.
Absolutely. It's about finding that sweet spot where your passions, skills, and values all come together. And when that happens, it's truly something special.
It's like everything just clicks into place and you finally understand what people mean when they talk about feeling a sense of purpose in their work.
Exactly. And Graham offers some really practical advice for how to get there. Be persistent. Don't be afraid to experiment. And never stop learning. He also reminds us to watch out for those distractions of prestige and money, which can lead us down the wrong path.
And of course, that mantra we keep coming back to, always produce. Even if it's just a little bit each day, keep working on the things you love.
That's the key, because finding work you love isn't a destination, it's a journey. There will be ups and downs, moments of doubt, maybe even detours along the way. But as long as we keep moving forward, keep exploring, keep learning, we'll get there eventually.
It's like we're all on this quest to discover our unique talents and passions and then find a way to share them with the world.
Beautifully put. And Graham's essay is like a guidebook for that quest, full of insights, encouragement, and practical advice.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought-provoking question. From Graham's essay, he argues that most unpleasant jobs would be automated or simply disappear if no one was willing to do them. Is that true? And if so, what does that mean for the future of work? It's something to ponder as you continue on your own journey to find work you love. And if this conversation has sparked your curiosity, I encourage you to check out Graham's essay in its entirety. You'll find a link to it in the show notes.
It really is. It's a question with huge implications.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Paul Graham's How to Do What You Love. We hope you found it as insightful and thought-provoking as we did. And remember, if you're looking for more deep dives on thought-provoking essays, be sure to subscribe to BookCast Essays, where great essays speak to you.